What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Savant of Suffering here, and we're back with episode 94 of the video game therapy series. Getting back into a groove of these, hopefully. So, hopefully, not too long of a delay between them because they're for me and it's therapeutic in some sense. It's also good just to get all my bad opinions out. I've talked about this many times that I think everybody should have their own. You can call it a blog, whatever medium you need to express yourself in, such that your horrible ideas and things that you need to just spew out for whatever reason, um, you just get out of the way. So you don't have to talk to these. You don't have to bring this up around other people. Like you see it with, it's a kind of like a running joke or a gag with people. They'll be like somebody that works like a dead end job. It's like you're getting your groceries bagged, and they're like, "Oh, paper or plastic? Oh, plastic's fine." And like, "Yeah, my husband just left me." And it's like, what the what the fuck? I can't. This is not the time nor the place. I'm sorry, but I cannot help you or talk about you this because I don't know who you are, frankly. But yeah, so I do feel a lot better about everything after I do these, and I don't get paid. Nobody makes me do them. I just do them when I feel like it. There's no guilt tripping. There's no really social part of this. I mean, there is, I guess, to some very small extent, some social interaction that happens in the comment section, but that's only a few videos. For the most part, there's no other person or no other party that has to hold up their side of the bargain. Really, the only other things involved with this excursion is software, and that can be programmed to do exactly what I want to do. So, hasn't let me down yet. It's only getting better, actually. So let's move into the first topics here. First topic is art. I've talked about art before a lot, and it's always an interesting position for me to be in, at least personally, because my, I'll say, academic, professional, technical background, even though I kind of hate all of those words of like that defining any part of your existence. But my background is a field that is very, very far away from art. It's in computer stuff. It's about as specific as I want to get, but very much not a place where artists generally thrive. That being said, I hope it's evident in some sense that I have great reverence for art of all kinds of its cultural, social, and philosophical value, as well as the values it just gives to individual people through creating different things. That being said, lots of modern art is retarded for several reasons. Not because it lacks any amount of social commentary or something, and sometimes that's even why it sucks so hard. It's just that art is now seen to some as like a just another variable in the equation of society, and it has to be kind of managed and upkeeped the same way you'd manage, I don't know, like the number of lawyers or something in that way. Like you're applying like market dynamics to what again should be like an entirely abstracted component of society as artists. And as artists do this to themselves too, it's like, well, you got to make a living somehow. So it has to be like, art has to be an investment vehicle in some sense, where there's like art that's worth more and worth, and especially so a lot of modern art that fits a lot of this and was made even with the acknowledgement of market criteria is just bad art. Art needs to be made for art's sake. Art for art's sake is kind of the premise of art, but even that can be weaponized and marketized to make art just, again, can be reduced to an investment vehicle or a necessary evil, an equation. A lot of economists and people that are, I'll say hyper rationalists are always very critical of art. Oh, it serves no purpose. It's stupid. Or, and art includes music and includes all kinds of artistic expression here. And it's not to say that art is worth no money, but art is worthless. Like should be economically have no, that shouldn't be a part of it, right? It's like what, I don't know, it's like measuring the significance of, I don't know, it shouldn't be something that you can quantify in terms of its value. So it should be made, uh, again, for no reason, and shouldn't have inherent, like, oh, we should wait for this guy to make another piece of art because then he can like make money or something. That shouldn't be. It should be made for art's sake. And I think that's why a lot of modern art now is bad, is that because everything is subjected to this market economics, and that's the economics and the finances thing has become such a central part of society. Not to say it ever wasn't, but it certainly is now with the advent of internet technology. Everyone is very acutely aware of all the market dynamics of things, and always looking to capitalize. Whereas I think at some point people just did their jobs, whatever that might be, and they had kind of some faith or some faith in the system to upkeep them, right? For the person who sells bread to still have bread next week, right? It wasn't like they had to well, there's supply chain issues and you got to no, they were the farmers. They just farmed and did their shit and kind of had this expectation that if they farmed and made their shit, everything else would kind of work, right? And sure that works until it doesn't. But needless to say, they weren't financiers. They just did personal finance or didn't really have any of that, because that just the way the society was structured at that time. And the people that made art, for that sake, certainly weren't doing it with any amount of money in mind. It just wasn't the point of it. And a lot of modern art is kind of ruined for that reason. But so art in that sense should be worthless. Again, it should be worthless, and not to say that it holds no value. It obviously holds tremendous value, but it should be worthless in that sense. In terms of it should be economically worthless. But obviously, there is tremendous other intrinsic value that happens, or extrinsic value that is not measured in amount of money or anything. So I don't know. A lot of art has been ruined, and then because then you also judge an artist based on how expensive the work is, which is again such a ridiculous idea. And I think many artists now maybe just hope that history will smile on them in some reason or something. I don't know. Because there's also a lot of art that perhaps isn't made, or no one really understands it. Suppose you're like this brilliant artist who makes art that I don't know is too profound for us normal folk or whatever. But again, it has inherent value to a very, very small individual group of people that resonate so deeply with your art that it's something. I don't know. Again, I think it's just kind of silly that art is now like just this investment vehicle, and is people who are hyper pragmatists don't even put any kind of even cultural reverence to art. It's just it's just an annoyance of an equation in the system, especially like with music now. And the reason this is even relevant at all is just with a lot of the AI talk. It's funny to kind of think about AI companies that focus or have some relation to like art, like making art or automating art or automating music. Like there was the DAW that I use. DAW is a digital audio workspace, but it's like what music producers do to write, like to produce and make their music. It's got like instruments and stuff. It's the one I use pretty crappy right now, just because I haven't had the time to learn like a better one or find one that meets all my needs. But the one I have is browser based, called BandLab, and it has like a create a song with AI as like one of the features. Like, so you can, if you're creating a new project, you can either just open a blank one, right? Or literally the only other option is either blank one, which used to be just the default. It didn't even have a drop down, but now it drops down to say a blank one or created one with AI, which again, at some point it's like, I mean, what's the point then? Is like, unless you're making it for money, and it's important how much that you're outputting, which I guess some artists have to consider that. What is even the point if it's not like you enjoying the creation process? It's kind of defeats the purpose of making music altogether. If it's just a matter of how much can you make, right? And what's really the value of one song that you spent 80 hours on versus just a bunch of songs that you pumped out in 5 minutes? I don't know, especially with the stupidity of people that consume. It's not like we have, like the market will give you a fair analysis on whatever your content is. You can pump out pure garbage, and some people just love it. I mean, like I said, Rihanna could make a whole album of her just, her bathroom noises or something like that, and literally it would win a Grammy or an Emmy or something. I don't even know what the fucking things are. I think one of those is for acting, but people would eat it up, and it's like, this is bad. There's no amount of like what's even good or bad anymore. There's no like the critics. I mean, nothing. Who cares? These critics are stupid, which is fine. I'm not one to like give power to professional art critics, because those guys are losers and probably gonna be paid off. They're no better than politicians in that, and very abstracted sense, but there's certainly like there's some amount of quality that nobody cares about, especially beyond a certain point. It's like if as long as it meets some very, again, kind of arbitrary and dumb criteria, you can kind of fool people into liking or having, it's not often that there's deep appreciation for anything anymore, which is for anything art wise anymore, at least, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Basically, the summation the point I want to get this is, if you view art as a investment vehicle of some kind, or some variable in a larger economic equation, or just a nuisance of technological progress, you're a loser. And I hope that you're so excited to get your brain moved over to a neural link, and then all of a sudden you lose any ability to feel love, and then you're just a robot doing conscious and aware of you doing root tasks over and over again. Because if you don't appreciate humanity while you have it, I hope you won't appreciate it when it's gone. So hope you never been in love before, because that would suck if you can't do that anymore. So anyway, I just hate that idea. So let's move on to something else, something a little less. Nope, don't blow me up. Nice try, buddy. Heard that one. Let's see here. It's on my list here. Yeah, I suppose speaking of higher intelligences, or just, I guess, things and phenomena, I'll say, beyond our existence, because I kind of make vague references towards omnipotent or omnipresent beings or whatever, or omnipresent principles. And sometimes, most of the time, it's easier just to say God, even though most people just assume that is like the Bible, Christian God, which is not generally who I refer to when I just say God. But God could very well be just like omnipresent, physical phenomenon that we just don't understand, right? It could be, and I don't mean to overly agree with physicists here in saying that it could just be a theory we haven't found yet between quantum mechanics and classical physics, or some amount of applying quantum mechanical phenomena to what we see, which would still, again, beg the question of like why or who did this, that kind of thing. It wouldn't just be like, even if we had the equations to mapped everything deterministically, or in some way where we could at least kind of get it pseudo-deterministically, because I'm not sure if we can even do that with quantum mechanics, then it wouldn't still beg questions of like, well, okay, this is how it works, but why? Was there there's not really going to ever be full answers for all that. So, but assuming that there is, and you call that thing or presence or whatever God, what would make you think that it would be comprehensible by, in English, right? Why would English be the language it is? Like, and sure, like I know there's other, even any language, any spoken or written language, even binary. Why would it be something comprehensible by, again, a language that we could understand or interpret, including binary, or hexadecimal, or again, whatever kind of communication medium we want to use, whatever format we want to put that in. Why do we assume it's legible, right? At least by us, by any number of computationally intensive or not processes. I don't know. I don't want to completely. I realize it's a silly thing to just assume that it's not, and then you just give up, because that would be the alternative. Is you just assume that we can't comprehend whatever this, I don't know, suppose this super language is God language or something. And it's just, well, we surely can't. So I'm not saying there's no effort to put towards that, but it's at least worth considering that it's not. There is some possibility that there is some amount of information or some, feeling that isn't able to be in compute. And I think the way to think about this is like, how do we represent like the feeling of, even human feelings, right? We can't. Now we can like abstract that into code, right? We can make feelings just correspond to actions we would take with feelings. But like, let's just assuming, like, because the way I look is like, oh, if I'm hungry, then I'll go eat. Therefore, you could program a robot to get hungry and eat, but you can't really ever simulate a robot, truly just getting hungry. It's only what happens after he gets hungry. Because the way I would try to think about that is then, okay, can we make like a robot get hungry and sad, but then like not do anything because of that, or not act because of that, like literally just sitting still in a room, Whereas, a human sitting still in a room knows it's getting hungry, knows it's getting sad. Maybe it doesn't do anything. Maybe it does. And I'm not saying you could just program randomness or that humans are just these, biological neural nets that have this, some arbitrary criteria for doing things. But surely there's, I just don't think that we can encode the feeling itself, not necessarily like the action or the response or even just whatever, encode a certain feeling of it. And I'd be remiss to think that it is just something it is just, weights in a machine learning neural network. If that's really what feelings are, just weights in a network, then I guess fuck me, right? But again, there's even no amount of, like quantifying how this poem made you feel in that sense. And so I suppose it's can be somewhat binary sometimes on people whether or not that they believe in that at all, right? It's like, again, I kind of think that this is where me and a lot of the tech accelerationists have much different views, is that they would be quick to say that it is just an encoding, and any kind of feeling that we ascribe as human is us being ourselves and trying to justify and isolate our own existence. Even so, like, suppose that it is something, it is a weight in a neural network. This is where you'd ask the question, should you, right? It's like, we could, it's maybe perhaps we determine that it's possible and probable, again, with a certain amount of manpower or something, that we could devise a solution that would make humans obsolete in any sense. Which, again, humans aren't necessary, really. No animal is necessary. Like, if humans didn't exist, it wouldn't really matter. There's not like it's not like we're holding up the cosmic unit. We're not. We're visitors. We're inhabitants of the cosmic universe. We don't have to be around. Just humanity as a whole. It's not like, whatever, anything. So given that we don't have to exist, no other animal species is like this duty to exist, right? It's not like it's like dogs must live. It's like, no, there's no, the universe doesn't care. Humans don't, the earth doesn't care. The earth, again, because we don't, even ascribing the earth some amount of humanity and saying, well, the earth cares if we're around. No, it doesn't. Again, the earth would probably like it if we all died and left, because we're fucking with it and, screwing around with it, that it shouldn't like us. Anyway, given that we don't have to exist in that sense, what would be the point then of like developing a technology that would kill us all, or make us obsolete in some sense? Well, it's like, well, we could, but then, we don't want China to have it. It's like, okay, so then it's a dick measuring competition. Like, if that's what it is, then fine, but don't make it seem like you're looking out for humanity's best interest because of what, China, or like the bad actor or some kind. I think humans as a whole at some point should be able to recognize an existential threat to our existence, realize that our existence at all is, again, either some kind of sick joke or some kind of gift, again, depending on how cynical you are. But let's suppose for this, it's a gift. And, to exercise our ability to eradicate ourselves, we're tarnishing that gift. We're just throwing it away, instead of, again, kind of just appreciating what we have and not overstepping our boundaries, so to speak. So even if we were able to say, like, okay, if the entire universe and every country got together, we could create godlike technology. Okay, then to do what? What are we going to do? We're obviously not gods. What, to kill ourselves with it? Why would that be? Great, very smart idea. We're gonna go all through this, develop God, and then just kill ourselves with it. What's the point in that? Why would you do that? And I guess it was like, sure, I could, right? I could I wonder what would happen if I stuck my hand in a blender. It's like, I could kind of, okay, I can think about it, have the bad thought, right? Have like the forgot what it's called, but the I don't know, like the fucked up thoughts. It'll come to me later, but you have that thought and you're like, okay, wait, maybe I'm just not going to do that because I don't have to. So I think at some point we'll come to that terms with that with technology. And this isn't specific to any one kind of technology. It's just there is eventually some balance where human limits, humans kind of get into, I'll just kind of call God territory. So things that are supremely not human, kind of whatever. We start fucking with that, and then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, well, is it really worth all the humanity just to develop this God technology to have it? So what, China doesn't get it, or there's not like, there can't be an economic fluctuation or something like that. I think there needs to be some kind of balance struck eventually where again, you're kind of, it's the equivalent of looking, I could put my hand in the toaster, but like, why should I? Right. It's just to not gamble in that sense. But I think we love gambling. I think our species are big gambling species, and that makes sense biologically. We did a lot of gambling. Risk is a huge component of our evolutionary history. Right? We did a lot of risk taking with hunting and whatnot, eating random berries. And again, some of those risks pay out, and some of them don't. And I think now you get to the point where it's okay. Well, how risky of solutions should we take? Right? So surely there's like some kind of risk benefit analysis we can make at this point. And I think maybe lots of humans, at least lots of humans in the modern world would say, okay, this is, we've done some pretty impressive things. This is nice. Maybe we've afforded ourselves the ability to be more rational and slow about making these risky decisions. And of course, within every aggregate amount of humans, there's a certain number of like super risk takers who take ridiculous risks, and then there's also like super not risk takers. So there needs to be a balance of all that. So it kind of all ends up being you need a kind of balance. So it's not that I'm to say that there needs to be nobody in the world that thinks like Elon Musk or thinks like Zuckerberg or something. Those people surely should and can exist, and that's fine. We need that actually. But there also needs to be people, I'll just like me, that kind of vocalize against is in the opposite, or they're in the opposite direction of them philosophically, in the sense that there should be some sort of limits and halts on progress. Again, maybe at the expense of, we'll say, life-saving medical treatment, right? And that is an unfortunate side effect, but it's not like it's a zero-sum game. Like, it's not like we can make all this, we can do all these incredible progress. Like, it's like how many people has, it's like, well, how many people with cerebral palsy would I sacrifice for the advent of Facebook? That's because that's kind of what the trade-off is. Like, at a certain point, yes, like I'm advocating against certain, like, again, the potential of breakthroughs in some niche medical field where we'd save somebody's life or change their life because of some, technology we could use to make them hear better or something. But like, I would argue even then, that the development of that coincides also, with the adoption of technology. We coincide that with the advent of Facebook and pornography, right? And other things that have caused just as much human suffering as this person with cerebral palsy. So it's not like it's not a zero-sum game. It's just, it's not. I'm sorry, it is kind of a zero-sum game. It's not like a positive-sum game where we can just say, well, we have to suffer with the Facebook and everything else that happens because we need to save this one kid with cerebral palsy. Like, at some point, yes, I am sacrificing lives in exchange for other lives. And that's just, again, that's where I see the balance. I see there's a certain point technology becomes, it's more harmful to develop than it would be to not. And again, it's impossible. It's an impossible math equation, because again, how many people with some random niche disease is worth, again, the collective impact, the negative impact of mental health impact of a development of a social media platform or something like that, or Snapchat or dick pics or something. And of course, once the cat's out of the bag, cat's out of the bag. So it's not like I'm saying we can go back to a pre-Facebook time, as great as that would be, or that Facebook hasn't done good things too. It has. But I would argue that at a certain point, certainly in theory, you could entertain the possibility that technologies that have been developed could create a lot more harm than good. And, I would be fooled. It'd be hard for me to argue like the internet as a whole, as a technology that we've adopted in mass, is in holistically more harm than good. But again, there is a solid argument to be made that is the case, right? In the aggregate, if we combine every bad thing with every good thing, and sure, we also have to. The good things are the medical breakthroughs that save some random person's life or save drugs that do something good. But of course, even with drugs, there are also drugs that opioids, all these other terrible things that have happened, LSD or whatever. Again, you can kind of enumerate the goods and bads of everything, but at some point we're just arguing over goods and bads, and this is then it is kind of goes towards my argument of the fact that it's kind of a zero-sum game. There are goods and bads, right? And you can't blame me for saying I'm on the side of, okay, I think further development of certain technologies like apps, right, are bad. And you're like, well, you're a fool. This is all good. It's like, no, I just don't think that eventually, even if you were to develop this app, I don't think that it would be a net good. So it's simply my view. And There's people on both sides of it, obviously, but that's, I don't know, my 2 cents. So it's 'cause I find myself arguing with myself on this a lot too. Like again, because I've kind of come from somebody in the industry where it's heretical to think that like, well, maybe you shouldn't do this. No, this is a bad idea. Maybe we could just, maybe like it's the smartest thing for this company just to shut down because it's bad for people. Which no one would ever entertain. Like, it's because line needs to go up and to the right. So anyway, I guess I'll move on to something else. But yeah, I suppose I can talk about yeah. I guess I'll talk about like understanding a little bit. Learning is an interesting paradigm that's been around. I've made some kind of vague argument that learning is just kind of asking the right questions to oneself. There's all kinds of frameworks for how education of any kind actually happens inside of, our biological neural net. Some people just think it's data that's in, but sometimes it doesn't really make sense as a human because like I don't think we don't see places in neural networks where like they have one additional data point and all of a sudden they figured everything out. Like these kind of aha moments. But that does tend to happen with humans. If you've like, taught some idiot kid, all of a sudden you show them one thing, they're like, oh my God, I get it now. And they can kind of do it. These neural nets that we train we don't really see that behavior. Again, I'm not that intimate with the studies on training neural nets, but there's no architecture again where that really happens. And we don't see that in a compelling enough percentage. That being said, there's a lot of interesting ways we learn now. Like I think the primary way that used to be historically was like reading. And reading is, in terms of the speed, is pretty fast. Like you can read things pretty fast. I think the only one that might be able to give it kind of a run for its money, I guess, depending on how slow a reader you are, is like audio. But I'm thinking about just the number of people that learn through video, which I think in comparison to either reading or listening is slow. It's slow, right? I think reading it would be the fastest in terms of compared to video or something else. Now it might not be as deep in the sense where if you're having trouble visualizing something, you need those 2-3 dimensions. Or I guess it's 2 or 3 depending on how you count. I guess it's 3 if you count the 2 space dimensions of the flat video, and then the third dimension is being time. But I don't know. I think it's interesting that we gravitate so much now towards video, even though it's not, at least doesn't strike me as like an inherently more efficient. Now, again, maybe it's like less fun or it's more fun, than reading or something. But I guess the point is to educate. I don't know. You'd probably be better off reading something than watching a video. And especially the other argument, I'm very much pro reading, like a physical actual book. I even don't like the e-readers because I just don't like the idea of a tablet where you read stuff or just the screen in general. Like not even like a blue light argument. I just think the physical books, not only, they don't make sense. Oh, you're killing trees. This is 40,000 trees or something like that I'm saving. It's like, well, no, did you think about all the trees you killed to fucking make all the silicon and even just promote that whole industry itself? Like, no. Or about the software developers that you're cutting down trees to pay their dumb salary. Whereas like the book is, I guess it's similar for the machinery of making the book. But either way, the physical pages, the act of turning a page, the act of your eyes moving instead of like, a camera following your pupils around or something to shove you words down your throat or something like that. I don't know how people read books on Kindles anymore, but either way, I'm in favor of the physical reading. I think physical is far superior. And then even in terms of like how fast you can consume information, it's faster with reading than it would be to listen or to watch otherwise. And also listening and watching is also an entirely passive thing. I think it pisses me off when people are like, oh, I read that book. And no, they just listen to the audiobook. That's not the fucking same. You can be asleep listening to an audiobook. You cannot be asleep while reading. Like you can't make progress reading while you're asleep. But you could get through an entire audiobook on a video or an audiobook. And that's why I don't consider it reading a book if you listen to the audiobook. Now, the exception would be if you listen to the audio like while you're reading along with the text. But then I'd argue again that process of reading is you looking at the text. The audio is simply again, maybe more needless stimulation, or just if you suck at reading, I guess it, fine. But that would be the only really adjustment to that. Either way, I don't really count it as reading if you're listening to an audiobook, because you can do that while sleeping, which is, again, that's my list. Your eyes have to move. Your hand has to move the paper in order for you to read a physical book. So it doesn't count if you're listening to the fucking audiobook. But either way, I think video is generally a much slower media to consume. So I would argue, even if it's about education, if that's really what you want, to learn more, learn faster, you'd be learn faster reading a book than you would watching videos. So watching videos is not the fastest way to learn. So even in terms of getting things in, I'm sure it sounds fun, but that is the point to have fun, or is the point to learn? So you tell me. So I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there's a faster method, entirely faster than video and faster than reading text, right? Is there a way to encode something faster than like English and reading it that way? Because video is certainly slower. I guess pictures are kind of a different paradigm entirely. I guess if you were able to read a book that's entirely just pictures and get as much information as you would just through text, maybe, but I don't know that we communicate more effectively using pictures than we would text. So I guess that's kind of an open question there. Also, in terms of visualizing stuff, I was thinking about just dimensionality later, and earlier, and it started with thinking about like death, and death being the potential just loss of a dimensionality. So like if we're four-dimensional beings, I guess if you count time, so it's 3 space dimensions and 1 time dimension. Death would be just kind of the end of our like perception of time, even though our 3-dimensional body continues to exist just as dying cells or something like that. And of course, the consciousness being aware of that time. So it's kind of the end of our observation of our time, whereas our body still exists in 3 dimensions. It just becomes dirt or whatever else, wherever else it gets cremated, becomes ash and dust, whatever ends up happening to our actual 3-dimensional cells. That being the death of it. But even like starting with 4 dimensions, it's very easy to visualize for us because we've kind of existed in that sense. 3 dimensions, it's easier, and 2 dimensions, 1 space and 1 time is even easier to that. But like 5 dimensions is like almost impossible for us to visualize. And I was thinking about like the viewership on our 3 dimensions. So we have like our eyes see things in 2 dimensions, but we have 2 of them. So we have 2 eyes that see things in 2 dimensions. Thus, we can see 3 dimensions. I suppose if you count time as 1, then our eyes are 3-dimensional viewers able to visualize 4 dimensions. So in order to properly see 5 dimensions, we need 3 4-dimensional eyes. So I'm trying to think about like how would we be able to perceive a 5th dimension. And I'm sure like we can kind of think about 5 dimensions a little bit if we make it 3 space dimensions and 2 time dimensions. But 2 time dimensions gets almost impossible really quickly. And then maybe someone else can do it, and I just don't have the brain for it. But it certainly isn't it hasn't been a trivial thing for me to be able to visualize 4 Euclidean dimensions in a time dimension, or 3 space dimensions and 2 time dimensions. It's hard. Maybe I'm just not a physicist. Maybe that's why I'm not a physicist, is I'm not able to conceptualize that much. But again, once things go beyond, even in our 4-dimensional universe as 3-dimensional beings with 1 time dimension, it is already kind of difficult to visualize some things and some movements across an axis. But it becomes a point where there's too many things going on, and maybe that only way of communicating that or knowing that is just like some intuition based thing that again I don't have. So I don't know. Anyway, that was a bit about dimensionality and viewership, which is interesting. But let's see. I guess this is something that I've thought about. So maybe you've heard this before, or you've been in an environment where you're the kind of the junior, and there's people like your senior around, and someone might say, "Well, there's a lot of wisdom in this room." So I was thinking about just like advice related to wisdom, and then people that are older you having more advice or having more wisdom. And I've made the distinction before that like wisdom or experience or knowledge or something isn't necessarily time you've been alive. Because again, if you're just somebody that plunges toilets for a living, like forever, and doesn't ever do anything else, like maybe you've gotten really good, maybe you haven't. Like, I don't know. It's not necessarily like equates directly to like your wisdom, right, of the world, right? If you were just in a box, you're surely not going to be wise in the ways of the world. Now, generally, there's like a correlation. I'm not saying that every 20-year-old is more wise than a 40-year-old, but certainly it's possible that 20-year-olds have more wisdom than 40-year-olds. And maybe I think the better way to look at this, and the way I was thinking about it, is that there's like even just no such thing as like wisdom or knowledge. It's simply like good or bad opinions of things, right? So perhaps like or even just useful maybe might be a better word than good or bad. So perhaps like, let's say like career wisdom, right? I guess that's generally the context you might hear it in, of like, I don't know, if you're like a junior employee or an intern or something, and they're like, well, get to know everybody because there's a lot of wisdom here. It's like the wisdom might only be in the sense of like career, right? Obviously, maybe I'm not going to trust their wisdom, of 3 failed marriages. I'm not going to trust their love wisdom just because they've had more time around it. And maybe you should. Again, I'm not saying it's always no or always yes, but there certainly isn't a direct association between wisdom and time doing said thing. But the good or bad opinions would be useful in like whatever context we're speaking about. So maybe if they've been very career successful, they might have only useful wisdom in that sense, not necessarily good or bad, because their advice might they don't even know why they're successful. And that's kind of the other maybe complaint I might have with like people giving advice, is like, even if you have achieved a level of success, whatever that might, however you might define that, and even if you and this other person agree on the definition of success that you've had, what's to say you are aware of what actually made you successful, right? So maybe it's like, let's say somebody, I think this is a silly example, but let's say somebody, every time they wear their lucky pajamas, they get a promotion at work, and so they, and it takes them maybe 40 years to figure out that this is the case, because, they don't get promoted. Most of the time they don't get promoted, but every once in a while they'll wear their lucky pajamas and they'll get promoted, that day or within, I don't know, that quarter or something like that. So then he's talking to the intern. I'm sorry, I'm battling these dumb, hopefully it's not too loud, battling these dumb guests. He's talking to the intern. He's like, well, it's the key to a good career is very simple. Just make sure to wear your lucky pajamas on the first day of every quarter. And it's like, this person has achieved this success that maybe this intern's after. Maybe they both agree on like, okay, I know what success looks like. But this guy's advice is stupid because he obviously doesn't even know why he got promoted. He's attributing it to fucking underwear. And it's like, yeah, sure, like an example like that, it's easy enough to see, well, this person's just an idiot. Who would think that underwear has anything to do with it? But some people give advice that I would argue is just as like dumb, where it's like, I mean, I don't know, like, again, I'm not going to give specific examples here because the industry is very too much and there's just a lot of it. But it's like, again, could there be a time where, is it possible that there is a lot of wisdom, so to speak, or advice that is communicated that is just as silly? It's like saying wear your favorite underpants to get a promotion, right? It's just that's not what it was. And so it could just be luck. And I think it's, you don't get like, you shouldn't get advice from like lucky people, so to speak. I think you really should trust people that have generally been unlucky. And I think those people might have more wisdom than not. So someone that was born into a very wealthy family, wealthy circumstances, or just fortunate circumstances, and then, has achieved the success, again, like despite of what? Nothing really. But, how much should you really listen to their, advice on success? Like, probably not much, because they could really be attributing their success to their fucking lucky underpants. So it's like, you'd be an idiot to listen to really anything they had to say, because it's probably going to make it worse, right? I think I would rather listen to someone who's like, again, not been fortunate. So that's where even like a homeless person might have more, wisdom, I guess, at least if they've been conscious or haven't been drugged out for most of it, than someone who just worked a random career for 40 years and like, just kind of their promotion strategy was just wait until somebody dies, which is not even joking. That legitimately is a promotion strategy in some industries. That's what happens. You just wait until somebody dies. And once they die, you step in, right? You just need to be the person there when they step in. So it's just like, it's not even, how is that even up to you at all, really? Unless you're going to run around killing people, that. So, I mean, career advice is especially where I think it gets really, really bad, but the same could happen with like love or relationship advice. And that's why I just be very, very skeptical of anyone too willing to give out advice and like say that they know what's going on, or even just anyone, even just wary of people that have been successful and are giving out advice, right? I think advice should almost be given grudgingly and should be given with so much like, well, you know, so much nuance that it almost is worthless. In the sense they're like, well, you just figure it out yourself. It's not like I can't really give you advice that is going to be practical because, again, I don't really know what exact obstacles or things that you'll face. So it'd be silly for me to give you advice on like wearing underpants if I don't even know if that is the right, you know, or get to know a person named John because they got promoted by a person named John. It's like, oh, if you have any Johns in your company, make sure you know them. It's like, well, what if there's like no Johns? Or what if the John that does work there is an idiot? It isn't responsible for promotion. So like, you'd been wasting my time telling me to go befriend the guy named John because that's how you get a promotion. But that's just how you did it, and that doesn't mean that it's how it works for me. So I'm not equating all career advice of any kind to something as dumb as like get to know the guy named John. But at times I think it does feel like that, and it's not. I think it shouldn't be wrong of me to be skeptical of that. The other thing with like maybe this is more specific to mentors than it is about like, oh well, this person can be your mentor. I don't think mentors should be selected for you. You know, I don't think that someone should tell you who you should look up to. Right? It's like, oh well, you know, make sure like let your mentor this manager who, you know, is whatever, let him mentor you and how to be better or whatever. I was like, what if that guy's a fucking idiot? Like, shouldn't I pick the people I look up to? And then, you know, and again, I'd be damned if you do, damned if you don't. So it's like, I'm not saying that people. It's very possible that someone doesn't know who would be a good mentor and who's not. So don't tell me who I need to look up to or tell me who I need to take advice from. Because what if they're actual fucking morons? And sure, maybe they've achieved success, but do they know why they achieved success? Do they know maybe they're just lucky, right? And it's not fair to say you shouldn't look up to anybody, but you should at least have choice over, you know, who to look up to, right? So, you know, and it's not my fault. Maybe it's just not people that work at this dumb company. Like, why is it really there has to be somebody at this company that I should look up to for, you know, relationship advice or any kind of advice? It doesn't even have to be anything, but, you know, it's like, I feel like each person should choose. I shouldn't be shamed because I don't want to look up to this guy. I'm not enviable of this person's existence. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just not impressed by this person, but, you know, there are people that I would look up to, but maybe they don't, you know, they aren't a mid-tier product manager. So why do I have to look up to this person just because I work here? So I don't know. I think it's a difficult situation for younger people to be in sometimes, where they feel forced to have to, you know, take advice and follow the guidance of somebody that probably is a complete idiot. So I guess damn me if I don't inherently trust somebody just because they've been around the company for a while. I don't give a fuck. They could have no wisdom whatsoever. You know, or again, they could be someone lower than me that would be more wise. I don't know. You know. But either way, I think you should be able to choose your own mentors. Unfortunately for me, most of my role models and mentors are dead and have been dead for for millennia. But good thing they've written, some of them at least, I guess except for Diogenes, have written something. So I at least have something to go by. And their advice doesn't get old because it's not relevant to B2B SaaS companies in the year of our Lord 2024. So anyway. Let's move on. Let's move on to something else. Let's see. Yeah, here's the other. This is kind of, I don't know, kind of hard for me to talk about, only because I've been so adamant about the contrary to this opinion. But it's an argument that consciousness is just a simple layer abstraction responsible for rationalization of our otherwise instinctual choices. So basically this framework or argument, which again is kind of tough for me to grapple with, only because I don't agree with it really. But the argument is that we make entirely instinctual animal choices, and our conscious human brains, you know, i.e. our prefrontal cortex, or really whatever conscious, intelligent part of our brains we want to pinpoint, is only responsible for rationalizing our instinctual choices. And this could go as deep as like, well, I want to have sex with her because she's pretty, to like, again, our own formulation of physics, right? These are all rationalizations of what otherwise our instinctual choices. And science kind of makes some argument against this in the sense that it provides us, again, some kind of, I'll say roughly objective way of looking about things. But ultimately, looking at the brain as simply a object that rationalizes things and is responsible and is capable of nothing more. It painting consciousness in that light is an interesting framework, and it's not entirely unfeasible either. But it's kind of difficult to make that assessment as a conscious being, because I don't think consciousness above consciousness is hard to disseminate, and it's even trying to pinpoint where consciousness is. Again, like the anthill or the beehive example are ones that I like to use, because like, well, then who or what is conscious? Is it the entire beehive? Is it just the queen bee? Are all the worker bees or worker ants conscious? I don't know. Some of them, maybe some ants just maybe respond to like just the pheromones of certain things. So then they could be modeled with automata, and therefore we could program a thing that are ants really. But could we program like the queen ant or something that maybe is responsible? So does that mean that it's conscious, right? Or is it computability that's beyond our existence? I think the argument that would maybe add or change my opinion on this would be if we were able to entirely programmatically, through our knowledge of computational biology, I suppose, able to emulate simple life forms through entirely artificial means. Meaning, we don't just get to like model a tree to like 80% accuracy or something like that. Like, we, from seed to full maturity, like simulate and create, not simulate at all, create, like objectively create something like a tree or like an anthill or some kind. And it's not even the sense that it would be indistinguishable, like even from other ants or for us, but I'm not even sure how we'd validate, like if we truly made an anthill, or if like it was just simulate a very, very good simulation of it. And this is where I think the Turing test kind of sucks, because we wouldn't know. Like, suppose that, again, like all the birds are fake or something like that. But fine, we made an anthill that we would, like, biologists would argue, like, again, does exactly what an anthill does. All the ants do exactly what regular ants would do. Besides, like, looking at them and comparing them and go, oh, these look like ants. They have the body parts of ants. We can squish them. They kind of they do all the stuff that ants do. But is it a real anthill? Like, or is it just a very, very good biological simulation of an anthill? I don't know. And same with like a human. Is this just a really, really good human, like impersonation or simulation of a human, like enough to fool a human, which isn't that much, because humans are dumb. We fool them all the time. Or is it truly another human? If we, again, that would be assuming we created, skin that's identical. We created real skin. We created a real fetus that had a real development process. Like, we did all of that, not just like, oh, we have like this synthetic hand-like material. Like, no, I'm talking about it being an actual hand, a human with blood, circulations, thoughts, a maturation process, all of that, not a simulated, code. And that's where I think we're quite far away from anything like that technologically. I think a lot of our abstractions are very, very comprehensible and easy, whereas I think truly simulating the biology of an ant and the physiology and / potential consciousness of an ant would be very, very difficult. And so then I guess if we were able to simulate something that was like an ant or an anthill, then the human consciousness to make one would be just to have an additional layer of awareness of something, or some kind of meta LLM or something like that. Because I've used in my work, I've used like LLMs that have meta LLMs. Basically, the language model will spit out something, right, and there's another language model that just observes it, right. And so the argument around like meta consciousness is that our consciousness is simply some kind of, again, weighted machine learning model that just observes our instinctual impulses and then creates some kind of rationalization for that. So, for example, like, again, I don't know. I don't want to use an example about like rape or something like that. Suppose I could. But it's like our our human body like goes up and gets something to eat, right? Even though we're already fat, right? Okay. That would be like the model, the meta LLM made like this decision to rationalize. It could like, again, it's kind of a meta LLM or a meta LLM is the wrong word for it, but a meta neural network. I guess that'd probably be more a generalized way to put it, but a meta neural network that is used purely to justify certain things. And the reason I think this is at all compelling, in the very least, is that we just absolutely love and like have to justify everything that we do, even in some very, very dumb sense. Like there's very few, and it's almost just unacceptable in a social and or like personal sense to do something for truly no reason. There's always like a reason, even if the reason's like, well, I want to do something random, so I did something random. Like it's hard for us, at least to communicate or to really to see ourselves doing things for truly no reason. Like we can have those. I don't know, those bad thoughts, or I forgot what they're called, like intrinsic thought or something like that. I don't know. Either way, it'll come to me later, and I'll comment on myself. But we have those thoughts, but then there's not like kind of always know why. Sometimes like maybe it's like this morbid curiosity is why we did something, right? There's always like this rational, again, kind of pseudo, even like rational quote reason, right? Even if the rationality ends up being flawed, but there's some, at least to us at the time, seemingly rational reason for us to do something, and that could be really the whole purpose of our brains in the first place, is just they're tools of rationalization of, again, what otherwise become just kind of instinctual impulses, right? To eat, to rape, to run, to feast, to whatever, are all just instinctual instincts. And our brain is just like, okay, well, how do I make this make sense, right? And that's all it's responsible for doing. It's not responsible for anything else. So it kind of hurts I don't know, it hurts me to think that could be a potential of what humanity is. We're here just to rationalize monkey behavior, because really, again, without our reasoning vortex or prefrontal cortex, or whatever the fuck you call it, we're monkeys that do stuff, right? And again, we have great reasons for doing something. We're impressive monkeys, but ultimately, if our consciousness and our brains truly are just rationalization things on top of a monkey's body, then that kind of sucks. Because then we're just fucking monkeys doing whatever monkeys would do, and then finding dumb ways to do it, right? Even if the way that our rationalization for stuff isn't like logically rational, it's still, again, subjectively rational to us, which is, again, maybe the just unfortunate part about that. So, let's see here. I think, yeah, I'll wrap it up there. I'm not sure if I've been at time or not, but I don't know. I think I'm probably at my time. So anyway, I'll see you guys next one. Peace out.